November 11th and 12th, and hope to see you here. What we have going on today is the Atlanta Arts Alliance. I'm going to read this, so forgive me here. The Atlanta Arts Alliance is a coalition of small and medium arts organizations in Atlanta, anchored in the visual arts. Our purpose is to be an advocate for the many organizations that make up our arts ecosystem, both nonprofit and for-profit, to better serve the artists and patrons of the greater Atlanta community. We've got a website up that's sort of the start of this open studio weekend that we hope to do twice a year. And we've already started an email list and an Instagram as well, and would love to have you on the email list. If you haven't been to Eyedrum before, the restrooms are behind the stage. We have Chef Blackstone and his friend cooking stir fry, so we'll have that available after the panel discussion or during, anytime if you want to get a snack, if you're feeling peckish.
It's good. It's very good.
We want to thank Jesse and Zach Queen, who were the Georgia Chalk Artists Guild, for doing the chalk drawing out front. We were able to introduce Jesse to Chantel Ritter at the Lantern Parade studio last night. They've always worked events together but had not met each other. And that's the whole point of this weekend and what we're doing with the coalition, is so we have time to meet and process and do all the things. With that said, I want to thank the panelists for joining us today, and to Amanda Norris for putting this event together. And thanks to everyone that's been helping out with the leadership of the Atlanta Arts Alliance. I want to include thanking Willow and Amanda and Catherine and Brandon Sheets and Ann and Nicole and the many other member organizations. Enjoy the panel.
Alright, thank you, Will. Thank you everyone for coming and for being here. And welcome to Creating Culture, a panel discussion about the Atlanta arts ecosystem. I just want to say one quick thing before we get started. We have some goals for today, and there are 3 very large goals, so we just hope to touch on a little bit of each of them. So we hope that we have a better understanding of where Atlanta is compared to other cities. We hope to create a sense of community and shared experience with our other artists and administrators here in the room. And then we also hope to maybe inspire some collaboration, which might happen organically with all of us in the same space. And so we hope to touch on all 3 of those things. And to talk on those things and their experiences, we have this great group of people here. And we'll do some short intros. So if you'd like to hear more about them and their experiences and the cool things they're working on, please read the handout, visit their websites, and learn more about what they're working on. So we'll get started with brief intros and then jump right in. So my name is Amanda Norris. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the Assistant Director of the Bakery Atlanta, and have worked with a couple other arts organizations that led me here today. And I've been in Atlanta since New Year's Day 2017 and kind of jumped right into arts and culture here, and I'm having a blast.
Hello everyone, my name is Janelle Dunlap. I am a social practice artist and independent curator. I come here from Charlotte, North Carolina by way of Chicago. I've lived in both cities simultaneously. I've been here since 2021, so I'm a newcomer. But yes, as of recently, I've started a beekeeping residency at Georgia Tech. So I'm an acoustic painter. I take beeswax and I convert it into paint. So I'm really about creating my own medium. But yeah, that's just a little bit about me, and glad to be here.
Hello everybody. My name is Namwon Choi. I'm a visual artist. I'm a painter. I've been producing paintings since 2020 actually. I came to the United States and the state of Georgia in 2023, and since then I've been finishing my education here in Atlanta, and I've been teaching and making art ever since. I've been making a blue monochromatic landscape painting since 2015. It's about what it means to be about distance, what it means to be about being far away, how do I distance, is it physical distance in relation to the intimacy of the distance, especially my work evolved an interesting meeting, right after COVID, where everybody is forced to keep a distance, right? So yeah, recent recipient of Working Artist Project, and I'll be having a solo exhibition at NOCA GA in 2024 in August, which I'm super excited about, a great honor. I am the product of Georgia, art education here in Georgia, really. I've been educated here, I've been teaching here, so I hope to contribute a little bit more about my experience here in Georgia and specifically Atlanta with you guys. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Donovan Johnson. I am the owner and director of Johnson Low Gallery. I've been in Georgia for maybe about 15 years. I started working in the commercial art world in 2012 at Bill Low Gallery, which was what Johnson Low Gallery was before, and became Johnson Low Gallery. I worked with another gallery here called Hathaway Contemporary, worked in New York for a while for a gallery named Lisa Cooley. And yeah, I hope to share my experience from that side of things. Yeah.
Hey, hi everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Allie Bashik. I was born and raised in Atlanta, and I've been really involved in the art scene for the last 15 or so years. Been working for the Goat Farm, formerly the Goat Farm Art Center, since 2011. And I have been spearheading the redevelopment. If you don't know about the Goat Farm, I could talk all day about it, so I'd be happy to as well. But we are redeveloping, we're gonna reopen in the spring. Contemporary art center with art studios, we do events, programming. We like to be a hub for arts in Atlanta. And yeah, my past, what brought me here was a magazine called Young, Foxy, and Free. Been around Atlanta for a while, you might remember it. It was an art and fashion magazine that I brought in from Athens, Georgia. So that's how I sort of like infiltrated the Atlanta art scene originally, and then worked for the Goat Farm.
So, hi, thanks for having me. Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah Higgins. I'm the editor and artistic director of Art Papers, which is a Atlanta-based organization that is the longest running arts publication, nonprofit arts publications in the country that has always been here in Atlanta. But before that, my background's in curating. I moved to Atlanta in 2015 to take a position as curator at the Zuckerman Museum up at Kennesaw State. But I grew up in Southeast Georgia, kind of south of Brunswick, and first moved to that's really exciting because Atlanta's kind of always becoming, always on the cusp, always about to be, it's always a really exciting moment in Atlanta, right? But what I think is maybe different and unique in this moment is that different relationship to knowing we need to take charge of our own narrative.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, just to echo what Sarah said, I feel like Atlanta, I've been here for so long and it's always about to happen. I think that, I don't want to jinx it, but I think it is actually happening. I'm in this like goat farm hole, so I have a hard time like having any context out of it. So just seeing the amount of demand there is for studios and just the community that comes with what we offer is just tremendous and exciting, and like I feel just like so fortunate to be on the forefront of all that. And another thing is like, for instance, I'm looking out in the crowd and I only recognize like a very small percentage of the people here, and that's so good. I mean, 10 years ago there's not a person in here I wouldn't recognize, just because like we're so small and the same people doing everything, and just so many new faces when I go out to restaurants and these typical places, and that is like, I'm one, getting old, but two, it's exciting, right? I think it's so cool, all the young people. I just think it's really, really exciting. And another thing is just there's so many people in the past that would just go to, they live in Atlanta for a little bit and realize they had to go to New York or LA. And I think we're getting some of those people back. Pandemic helped a lot. But people also just viewing Atlanta as a third option as opposed to, there's only two real options. So anyway, I'm excited.
Yeah, it's a tough question,
Yeah,
by the way.
So you all have different perspectives.
Yeah,
so.
but something I think that Sarah said that's really true. That if I can maybe disagree a little bit with, but is like the identity part of Atlanta. From my perspective, I think that it's important that Atlanta start to create its own metrics by which we kind of grade our own success. I think that the identity of Atlanta from an outside perspective, from I guess collectors that I engage with or artists from other places, is a bit confused, a little like it's all because it is always in flux. You have all the news articles that have come out about Atlanta that are commonly written by people that are not from here.
Mm-hmm.
So you have this kind of confusion of identity between the people that are here in Atlanta and the people that are seeing Atlanta from other places. Even if it's writers that are coming here and spending a week in Atlanta and then summing it up in an article for whatever publication that they choose to write for. I think there's a little bit of that, and I think Atlanta has always kind of had a little bit of confusion of identity because there's always this there seems to be this kind of, and I don't mean to be negative, I just mean to be kind of forthright about what I'm saying, but I think that there's this kind of shame about not being in art's epicenter like New York. I mean, especially being in a place like in the South. Like, if you think about all the different cultures that make up the South, it makes sense that there would be a capital or an epicenter for art in the Southern United States for all that is made up of the South, how the South is kind of made up. But I do think that there are a lot of exciting things happening here. I think that there are more galleries. I know that there are more galleries opening. There's more publications that are opening up and growing in different ways, and I think that's allowing for the people that live here in Atlanta to feel heard and seen more. I think what I'm most excited about is just the influx of people that have moved here from other places that are bringing more nuance to the community and giving more perspective from outside places, because I think we need that to better understand who we are, and so I'm really excited about where we are in Atlanta. I just kind of believe that we really have to get real about what the identity is. I don't think that we necessarily need to define it, but we do need to kind of we may not always be able to say things that we are, but things that we are not, or don't need to be, could be important. So yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think adding that excitement, Atlanta, it really is an exciting city. But it has been exciting at Rounding Two. When was that? Last time we had before the economic bubble, right?
Mm-hmm.
For recession, like Atlanta Art Scene was the exciting place. They have the most amount of gallery scenes popping up here and there. I mean, Castle area is to be the hub, really. A lot of young, new art gallery space that's showing younger artists, up and coming artists, the most risk taking, which varying works been exhibiting, but then it just the bubble disappear. And then there's a little bit of like, an exciting moment, right? It becomes so exciting again recently, especially after COVID. But then I think the causes of this acceptance are younger artists, really. I mean, there's locations like this and Bakery, those younger, so new up and coming galleries that are really supporting and nurturing young artists fresh out of art schools. I think they're bringing a lot of excitement. They're really the movers and shakers in Atlanta art scene. But I'm also, I'm probably touch upon the other factor of Atlanta art scene, but from my understanding and from my perception and readings, Atlanta is just a little bit polite on retaining established artists. They're very supportive and nurturing for younger artists, which is great. A lot of artists need that moment to grow, and I am the product of it. But then what's next, right? Like the gallery scene, I mean, new galleries popping up here and there, but we never know when they're gonna go on, right? And are they really sharing the same goal, like supporting artists? And supporting artists mean their program is growing, we both growing into a win-win position. But like it's most of the cases it's not like that. So I guess some of those mutual sort of appreciation as a makers and administrations and gallery owners and commercial sectors and nonprofit sectors. I think how are we going to retain sort of established artists to really concrete ideas of what our identity is about? I mean, beyond the excitement, how are we going to keep that excitement and make it more concrete and more exciting? And as a brand of an Atlanta art scene, I think that should be the big question that we have.
Also, to preface this, just reminding everyone, I'm a newcomer, right? But I was actually surprised to learn that the art scene was still, or at least the fine art scene was still getting its legs here as far as comparison to the entertainment industry, right? Because I realized, I was like, oh, these are two different spaces. So, there's lots of entertainment, but when it comes to fine art or art spaces or emerging art spaces, these are vastly different identities. So from what I've perceived and what I've learned over the 2 years since I've been here, is I'm going to reference Johnson and Lowe actually. The show The Alchemist was a pivotal moment in Atlanta art history.
Yes.
And I was shocked because I was like, but this should be normal, right? This is Atlanta. Just coming from Chicago, and I'm like, okay, this is another weekend. But that was a really pivotal moment for folks here, and I was really surprised. So I really think that things like The Alchemist need to be a normalcy here, and I don't understand what's keeping that from happening. But as far as the emerging art scene, I was blessed enough to come across the Bakery when I first moved to Atlanta, and then I discovered what one of the crux, the crux of the issues here for emerging art spaces or emerging art scene, the emerging art scene is space and developers, because they quickly lost that space, right? Due to some, politics with the developers in the area. And I was lucky enough to fall into the hands of Mint after being on a 6-month waiting list, right? These are the realities. So that for me informed my understanding that there is a dire need for space, an accessible space for emerging artists, and that there's such thirst, such hungry appetite. There's such a hungry appetite for established art exhibitions and just things to reawaken the senses of the art scene here in Atlanta. And as I mentioned before, I didn't realize that The Alchemist was such a pivotal moment for this community.
Well, you kind of already answered the next question, which is really for you two working artists, but also kind of for do we compare or differ to other cities, you know, with challenges or opportunities?
I mean, it's a difficult question because if I wanted to compare Atlanta to another location, then I have to like spend equal amount of time.
Yeah,
But I've been
you've
spending
been
all
here.
my life as an artist, as an emerging artist here in Georgia. But yeah, as I mentioned earlier, Atlanta has a lot of opportunity for young artists. There excitement, like I said, excitement is going. Project space popping up in here and there and creating. I mean, the East Atlanta is now up and coming, right? A lot of project space there for student space for younger artists. I mean, those are excellent. Those are great sign that Atlanta is healthy. Our ecosystem is healthy. I just for that job, I used to work work at school in Savannah. So I've been sort of constantly back and forth there. But like Savannah, there's some small satellite cities around Atlanta. I mean, speaking of excitement, isn't that much. I also noticed that the gallery, I have to say that the commercial gallery parts, I think the Atlanta galleries are a little too comfortable. You can read it differently, but like a little like they don't really like see beyond or like have a perspective goal, like short-term goal, long-term goal, or making their galleries names beyond regional. Like what are such good examples are like art fairs, Miami art fairs in New York's like. Atlanta galleries haven't been really actively participating in those beyond regional exposure opportunity. That's from my perspective. I mean, you guys can disagree. So just a little bit more broader spectrums of that's what I mean, being a little comfortable within our community, but like just a little bit more ambitious. That I was hoping to see in Atlanta art scene a little bit more. How do we go about this talents of young artists in Atlanta that nurture and make them grow? And once they establish their voice, then how can you broaden and introduce them beyond the region? I think that's also an important part of it now. I mean, luckily we have the social media that's that so well. That's also part of the way to broaden or their voices, right? Introduce the voices, but that's something we can discuss within this panel discussions. I think it's important to see that. Like, what is the goal here? What is their ambitious and perspective beyond the region? I think, it'll be important to touch upon.
I mean, of course, being a gallerist myself, like I hear this all the time, and I know this is correct. And I'm in my first year of the gallery under its new name, so those are all things that the gallery wants to work on. But I think one of the things that's like an undercurrent of a lot of the conversation that's probably happening around like where Atlanta can go and things like this, it kind of comes down to, I don't mean this to be, I don't want this to sound bad, but it kind of comes down to money, and it kind of comes down to support, correct?
Yeah.
So I think that like what I love about this panel, what I love about like seeing everybody in the audience here is one of the first times it's really happened outside in a place where what we're trying to do is actually have a conversation as a community. In order for art papers, the Goat Farm, your practice as an artist, Eyedrum, in order for them to continue going, there has to also be a huge kind of effort to engender support from the community outside of the people that we talk to all the time. So collectors, philanthropists, patrons, people that are buying art, giving money to art papers, I think Atlanta is really, really great for fostering talent. I think there's a lot of artists who are mentors and also have mentors, which I think is really important. Like, I think that the artist community is real tight, and they're great curators, both on this panel and in the audience out here. But at the end of the day, we can all do these creative things as much as we want, but if we're really not working on cultivating the people that are going to support what we're doing, then a gallery can't do an art fair. A gallery can't have, the social media presence that Zwerner or Karma or Sergeant's Daughters has. There has to be more support from collectors, I think that would actually be a really, you know, I think in future panels, a collector and a representative from the government in our city that could be doing a lot more should also be included on panels like this, because I'm not going to go any further because
If I may. we've touched on sort of like we're talking about an ecosystem.
Yes,
It's about
absolutely.
the whole ecosystem.
yes, yeah.
We've talked about sort of like the opportunities for young artists. Atlanta has always been great for DIY artists run grassroots spaces that either grow until they become budgetarily unsustainable, they hit the ceiling, or they dissipate because the people move on, or they, they burn out, nobody wants to take it on afterwards because they see burnout. Atlanta has a real problem sustaining and supporting mid-level institutions. Not just commercial galleries, which have their own kind of cycles of boom and bust, cycles of coalescence, like local, like in terms of where they are in the city, and then dissipation. Those are cycles that are happening. The same is for studios. There will be an area where there will be studios, and then that area, the studios are mobilized to do the thing for the real estate values in that area, and then it's done, and they're pushed out to the next place, right? That happens in other cities too. That's not an Atlanta problem, that's an Atlanta problem, right? Our nonprofit, mid-level nonprofit space is always precarious, it's on the rocks, struggling for support, and that has to do, when you ask about comparing us to other cities, right? Like, depends on what city. But if you see a city that seems to have things that you wish we had, I think it's valuable to look at what the things are, and then kind of back out, kind of reverse engineer that. So, if you see a city like Chicago, which I think comparing anyone in New York is sort of like whatever. It just doesn't compare. Same with LA. Those things are their own things. Yeah. Atlanta and Chicago could have some interesting dialogue, I think. And one of the things that I see Chicago have that Atlanta really does not have is really robust, mid-level, mid-career artist presenting spaces and institutions. And that's what keeps the artists here. That's what gives mid-career and established artists something to do here, so that they feel tethered here, so that they feel like this is a home that supports them and not just a home base.
It's also an understanding of legacy. What I've learned also with just being here, which was really interesting, the history that Kendra Walker shared about all the collectors back in the late 70s.
The Orly plane crash? Yeah.
Yes. So that was a legacy that was cut severely short. And I thought about the legacy that Charlotte's art history has. So there's one huge funder from the baking industry who essentially founded and funded the Big Five. So it's like, okay, so when our baking partners from New York come in town, they bring their families, we take them to the ballet, the symphony, and the blah, 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 blah. But from that, he also decided to continue giving. So you have institutions that were created like the Arts and Science Council that are meant to fund emerging and mid-career artists. So you have essentially an economy of artists who can live off of that as a working artist for years. Now, do you want to? That's another question. But there's also a scalability to it. So it's like, okay, so we're just beginning this relationship, so we're going to start giving you like a $2,500 grant, and then that can extend to $50K depending on how much you produce and how often you're producing and the scale of your work. But to come to Atlanta and understand that there's really not that relationship between the county and the community, because that is a county creation, I was like, what, where, why is there not a bureaucratic wing of the government that's like functioning as this funding source? And I'm not saying that that doesn't exist, because I have seen it, but I've thought it was more of a state-funded effort than a local effort. But also it makes it very specific to that space. So unfortunately for Charlotte, that means you create a lot of work that's very community-centric. that's only about that area, so you're not able to expand and go outside of that perspective. But, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, what was the question? So what I want to do is we were comparing, you know, these cities, but it essentially comes down to what you were saying, Zary, is like ecosystems.
Yeah.
It's like there has to be a healthy ecosystem, and the fuel of that ecosystem is money. And there are levels to this, of course, you know, because the philanthropic community has their opportunity to give to nonprofit spaces. Corporate entities have their opportunities to give to whatever spaces. And institutions should also be giving. There are so many art students that come from these institutions here. I'm not sure why they're not sponsoring a residency for their alum at a bakery or at a goat farm or wherever. You know, for me, those kind of connections make sense, and those were things that I saw happening in Charlotte and in Chicago very actively. So,
Yeah, there are definitely things we can learn from other cities and some gaps and some good things.
Right.
We touch on all of those. But I also think this segues into another question, which is, you know, we've said that we support emerging artists, we do hyper-local, and so with all of that in mind, I mean, y'all are all established in your own rights. Like, what does professional development look like for you now that you've like hit this level? Or maybe how you got here. You know, what are some professional development opportunities that you've had in Atlanta? And also can be a question for anyone.
I mean, I guess I'll say
Yeah.
like, I mean, for me, I mean, I had a conversation with someone recently about this, you know, I think mentorship is like ridiculously important. You know, especially like, I think really even given this conversation, you're talking about Atlanta versus some of these other places, you know, even when I first started, I had a mentor, and I have several mentors now. I think it's huge. You know, if I want to have a gallery that can aspire to do some of the things that Nemwan is kind of talking about, I know that I don't know everything. I feel like that's where I derive a lot of power from.
Yeah.
Is the place where I don't know everything. So I'm free and open to learning things. So I have mentors that run other galleries in other cities. You know, I think that it's hugely important. I think also within the Atlanta art community, the artist community, I think having a more heightened degree of mentorship within that community could also be really helpful as well.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go into a direction I didn't want to go. I mean, that for me, I think that's really important. I mean, in terms of professional development within, you know, from what I do and what I see from a lot of artists here, I think that mentorship specifically between artists is really important because, you know, we have artists from Atlanta that have achieved a significant degree of acclaim. However, you know, a lot of the times, because of the things that Nemwan is talking about, those artists, they may mentor artists in Atlanta, but oftentimes veer them away from being in Atlanta. You know, they veer them more into, you know, following paths that they found outside of Atlanta. It's an access to their work. The access to them is really difficult. You know, and so I think like really, you know, claiming some ownership over like, okay, I'm here in Atlanta, I'm from Atlanta, this is a community that's giving to me. Really thinking about how you can give back to that is hugely important. Because if things get hard in Atlanta and you leave, don't get me wrong, I understand. You have to support. No one's buying your work here in Atlanta, so you're leaving. Absolutely. But at the same time, like, you know, if you are interested in the evolution of Atlanta, what do you do then? You know, because leaving is, I'm not saying it's easy, but it's, in a way, that it can be considered an easier route to go somewhere else. You know, if everybody has that mentality, which most people have, in Atlanta, then Atlanta stays where Atlanta is. You know, I think having a gallery here in Atlanta, and I'll stop talking because I know we said no monologuing, but you know, having a gallery here in Atlanta, I mean, for me, I feel like I could easily go and work in another place. I mean, I love what I do, and I think I do it okay. You know, but there's so much that can be done here in Atlanta. So much that I see that I want to happen here. So I'm here. You know, there are artists that I know that I know, I mean, are incredible artists that stay here in Atlanta, and I see the work that they're doing to help Atlanta evolve, and I really, really appreciate that. Some of them are in this audience. So yeah.
Yeah, as a professional who left, I moved away from Atlanta not long after graduating. Went to from Atlanta College of Art, and then I managed a restaurant. It was like on the first wait staff at a store. I had my post grad moment, and then left and moved around and lived in New York and lived in San Antonio, which is an interesting case study because of what Lemonade did there. But and then lived in Central Florida, and then went back to New York, and then came back to Atlanta. I always wanted to come back to Atlanta eventually. It was always my goal to get back. Because for better or worse, it's my home. It's a place that feels like home to me. And I think that the leaving, just to kind of pick up on that, I think the leaving can be okay. But if you love it and come back, then you've made a commitment.
Yeah, you've learned.
I feel like and so, I think getting perspective from outside, and the reason that I'm bringing this up is because it touches on this perennial question of is it all about Atlanta, or is it about how we are whole? Is it, we can get really mired in thinking about Atlanta's problems and how to solve them, and then being very, these are Atlanta problems, but I feel like it's kind of, was I talking to you when I used the grits metaphor?
You did.
Yeah, where it's like if you grew up in Atlanta and you're here and you go somewhere else and you're like, well, in Atlanta, I'm gonna eat grits at breakfast. It's yeah, that's something people do in lots of places. And so I think that looking out, that listening to what people can learn from the outside, that being open to the outside can only help us see the ways that some of these problems can't be solved on Atlanta terms because they're systemic. They're the funding problems that we face in Atlanta are systemic. I talk to people in New York and they're starting to feel it there. Right? It's the world is changing, and it just changed real fast just recently. And we don't yet really know what that's going to mean for everybody. We feel that it's causing some change and instability, it's disruptive. We don't know yet. And I think the more porous we are, the more we're willing to look out, to think about, those experiences gained from outside. The more we'll be able to confront that. And I realize that doesn't answer the question, but I think that what I'm saying, mentorship. But I think that mentorship from beyond, is good. Also, I wish ARC would bring back the ALMA program. That was really great. Do y'all know the ALMA program?
No.
They changed it. They did change it. But it's kind of a different, COVID happened. But Atlanta Regional Commission used to do this annual program called ALMA, Arts Leaders of Metro Atlanta. And what was interesting about it, aside from that it gave you access to panels like this, and it created a cohort of arts professionals, it did something that doesn't happen often enough in Atlanta, in my opinion, which is that it brought together visual arts, with dance, with opera, with theater, with music venues, people who are in the arts and culture sector, writ large, were very siloed in these spaces in Atlanta. And it was a space where, I would be sitting at a table across from the folks at Balethnic. We would never be at a table in Atlanta otherwise, and that was an interesting relationship that led to interesting conversations. And, I think that, and maybe this segues into the collaboration thing, is that more togetherness, getting away from the scarcity model, this city ain't big enough for all of us, the weird indirect competition narratives, gotta let that go. Sorry, I think I just rambled.
Yeah, no, I like it.
I'd also like to just add 2 pieces to that.
Okay.
So, from what I've learned is that you don't have to go away. You just have to adopt a sister city. And going to that sister city will allow you to gain fresh perspective. And a lot of times we're able to take that perspective and bring it back. And then that's when you get to play pretend. So instead of fake it till you make say make believe until achieve. And in that, for me as an artist from the South, going to Chicago, getting that exposure and awareness, and then coming back to North Carolina, it gave me a fresher perspective that I had everything that I needed to take on other roles. So for me, that was professional development. So I was like, okay, so I'm gonna start curating. I wanna start bringing together other artists to do things maybe that I can't do, or that I can't create, but I still have a vision for. Or it also made me really interested in working with collectors. So I have clients in Chicago who's an older woman. She has a beautiful collection, like original fake Ringgold, Elizabeth Catlett, Jane Torrance, like just, her entire house is a museum. But none of this stuff is insured. So identifying opportunities, right? Okay, so this is a market here. This is an opportunity to make sure that this legacy is protected so that her family can take it to the next generation. Because if we're talking about creating legacy and also the opportunity for professional development, for me as an artist, it is my role, also someone who grew up with grandparents, it's my role to take care of elders, but it's also my role as an artist to make sure that work is protected, even if it's not mine. Maybe that's where my curator hat comes from. But taking on different roles for me is a form of professional development because I'm learning. I'm learning in those new roles, but also I'm making sure that in my off time, so my post-grad era also coincided with my postpartum era. So I've been, reading. Right now I'm reading The Black Experience in Design and seeing, as an abstract artist, listening to designers talk about their work, I'm seeing so many similarities and just understanding that those two worlds they do overlap. For me, it's really important to continue, it's very important to continue sharpening that aspect of my practice, being able to talk about it, but also bring in different mediums so that I can apply those mediums to the practice.
Yeah. A lot of self-guided
Oh.
professional development. You just throw yourself into it.
You just throw yourself into
Figure
it,
it out.
but it's play. It's
Yeah.
play. And for me, it gets to a point where it's no longer work. It's
Yeah.
play because, I chose to be an artist, right? Like this is a path that I chose, and now that I get to be here, I'm going to make sure that I build upon each skill, each avenue. Just because, as an artist, you also get a lot of random opportunities. So I want to make sure that I'm available for all of those to some regards. But yeah, make believe to achieve.
Great. Yeah. And then segueing from professional development, mentorship, all these things, I have a question mainly for the working artists, but also for y'all, development, that maybe some of you are wondering, is that pivotal moment from going to emerging artists to working artists. I know that is a gradual, long thing, but was there a moment that you're I've made it? Did you have that moment?
I've never. I don't think I've ever. No, I think it's very.
Yeah.
Artistic career is a long-term game.
Yeah.
And the moment you're thinking you're right,
Yeah.
then you're no longer developed.
Right.
So you stop right there. I think it's very dangerous. You know that I accomplished, I earned this, or I figured, I already know what I'm doing. That's very dangerous moments. I rarely have those moments. I think it's important to be critical, but I think, like I mentioned earlier, I think the institution where I received my second MFA, that's a state institution, you all know that Georgia State University is really the incubator. It is a transformative sort of educational system that somebody like me from Korea already had training before, doesn't know what to do in the US. Georgia State University, the 3-year program, really transformed me and really helped me and shaped me to discover my voice. I wasn't able to find my voice in that 3-year program, but it taught me that studio practice should be sustained regardless. The gentrification, speaking of studio, it took me 10 or 9 years. I finally have my studio elsewhere from my 1-bedroom apartment. That's the reality of this. But Georgia State University taught me that you all have to go through it. You have to wait until you earn that thing, right? I think, speaking of that, I think the moment I feel that I finally feel like my artistic voice started to recede. That's
Yeah.
probably what you meant by the
Yes,
accomplishment.
Coming from like emerging.
Is the moment that I find a studio space outside of my one-bedroom apartment. That I know that yeah, there is that. Like there is something is that's a great moment. Like this is a beautiful moment that I have my studio space outside of my one-bedroom apartment. Like I don't even have a living room space. I mean, what do you mean by sofa? I don't have any of those things. But that's a great moment, and Atlanta art scene provide those opportunities. And it took me a long time to earn that. But yeah, the studio space is the most sort of obvious measure of your acceptance by the community and beyond. But that's a great moment. But speaking of that, Atlanta Contemporary, although it's a subsidizing, but it's still like every year, like you have to like worry about like how much will there be a cost of increase of monthly rent? Like I still have to like, right? Your living space, your workspace, you have to like do your math every month and by month, worrying about your studio rents and your living space. I mean, that's part of it too, but yeah, it's been very challenging. And I probably think this might make it think about it with the Atlanta art scene, but like I just wanted to tell it out there. Like if Atlanta arts scene and provides a studio space, a little bit reasonable monthly rent, or even like certain duration of time to provide a free studio space for artists and make those opportunities super competitive. And like use that opportunity to develop their permanent collections. I know that North Fork is doing the studio rent, free studio artistic residency program. That's great, but I just hope to see that there be more opportunity for artists really, like I mentioned earlier, like having a studio space elsewhere in their living space, and that's the moment that you realize you're a professional artist. Like you're not working in a nursery, you know what I mean? You're a professional artist if you own a studio space elsewhere. So that's something that I'm hopeful and wishful that Atlanta community could potentially provide. But
Yeah, it's a pivotal moment.
It is a pivotal
more
moment.
studio space
Yeah.
will help us get there and help more people experience that.
Absolutely.
And you can participate in things like the Open Studios Weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah, right now, without feeling like you've got to bring people into your garage.
Yeah. And we'll just pivot into our last bit, which is about collaboration. So open question for anyone, like collaboration versus competition in Atlanta, or maybe, some good examples of collaboration that you've seen, or anything on that topic. Yeah. Or maybe a collaboration you've been a part of that you thought was really successful, and maybe how you measure that success.
I mean, I remember TCP, the Creative Project. That was very, very useful. That really provides a subsidizing studio and living space for younger artists.
They currently have it.
They're currently have it.
Echo,
Yeah. So that was extremely useful, especially fresh out of MFA program, just about to lose the studio space that I've been providing for 3 years at the institution. And that's just a difficult moment that artist has to dump out there and face the reality of found a living space as well as working space. So that was a great experience for me. It really helped me to work and develop my own body of work, but also it also as a return, we're asked to go out in local charter school every Saturday, Friday art classes. So we just assisting the students and teachers in the art education field. That was also like, it's like a balancing, right? I mean, you can see yourself as a teaching career, like what it would look like, what the perspective is going to be like.
Yeah.
So that was a great moment. Walther Fellowship, I remember those moments. Masood, you were one of Xavier, that Walther Fellow. Speaking of Walther Fellow, it was 2 years. Was it 2 years commitment or a 3-year commitment? I forgot. Was it 2 years? Yeah, but I got a job at a different stage, just for like temporal teaching position. But I was asked to leave simply because I got a job elsewhere in Atlanta. That was those moments, right? But I mean, it was good. Like we got to meet with the local arts people, the galleries, and museum folks, and it was a nice opportunity also get to know what's going to happen in the artistic practice beyond the institution. Working artist project is my dream come true. Again, it takes a long time for me to receive this honor, but yeah, that's a great honor. That's been my dream. Atlanta Contemporary Studio Program is also my dream. But yeah, I'm in Atlanta, keep helping me to set my goal. Like, okay, Walter, and then working artist, and Atlanta Contemporary. It really helped me to aiming higher and higher. So yeah, I mean, yes, I've learned a lot, and it was my arrival to my artistic career right now was possible because of those organizations, really.
I can think of so many wonderful collaborations that I've been part of, and usually through the Go Farm. My whole, but for better or worse, probably more worse than better, but like anytime in the last 10 years when there's been some sort of effort at an Atlanta arts district, when the developers give people free space underground right now, previously off Moreland, and then on South Broad, which I had a huge hand in at the time. Thought that would be successful. But just having all the arts organizations all within proximity to each other, the collaboration is undeniably, successful and wonderful. And then I think about organizations like TCP, Dashboard, Flux, anybody who's done any sort of project in the city, bringing a lot of people in. And most specifically, the greatest collaboration I could ever think of was in, I believe it was 2015, Hambridge did their auction, and so instead of just having typical art around, they collaborated with Goat Farm to create an event called Field Experiment, where we juried art projects around the city. And so we showed 5 of them, right? They got some funding to show the works, and then we funded, I can't remember how much money it was, $20,000 maybe, to the winner to create the actual end project. And one of them specifically that I don't believe got the main prize, but it was a collaboration between Teeling Dance, Georgia Tech School of Music, Hambridge, Goat Farm, and it was just incredible to see all these different entities. Teeling, if you're not familiar, Teeling and Glow, they both love collaborating in the city. And if you ever want to collaborate with Georgia Tech, they are chomping at the bit. School of Architecture, School of Music. I worked with School of Music, Architecture. It was a class of musical architecture with a group called Airlift New Orleans. They make these musical architectural houses. So we presented it with artists George Long, Justin Rabideau, Bing Coleman. They created a house that now lives in New Orleans. But we worked with Georgia Tech. So anyway, my answer is Georgia Tech. There's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, I've tried so many projects, businesses, and failed, and I'm the sum of every part of every person I've ever worked with and mentor, and anyway. That's it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of organizations in Atlanta. There's a lot of artists that do a lot of collaborating. There's a lot of organizations that are built on collaboration models. You mentioned Flux, Art Papers, where I am. We do public programming, but we don't have a space built for public programming. So every public program we do is a partnership with another venue with space. And those models are really natural, in a lot of cases. It's because we do have a small community, so it's people It's oh, we want to partner with Emory, I'll just holler at Dana. It's one of the ways in which our smallness can be a great benefit. You don't have to jump through a lot of hoops to reach out to people. And something I really love about the Atlanta art community is that we all kind of show up. I always kind of joke with the price of admission for the Atlanta art community is just showing up. If you want to be a part of it, just start showing up and see if you're in. Which is not how it is in a lot of bigger cities. And I think that has built a lot of collaborations over the years with small and large that we all, if we stop and think about it, we all know. Everything Dashboard does is pretty much is a collaboration. The Goat Farm has been out of commission and under construction for a while, but was a hub for a lot of collaborations and artist collaborations.
Will be again.
And will be. I think that maybe the subtext of the question might be acknowledging, appreciating, and cultivating those collaborations so that they aren't just these one-off moments, these things that kind of happen and dissipate, although some of that is great, we don't want to get rid of. But like, you know, and I think that that goes back to what I was saying earlier about the scarcity model having to kind of fall away. And to embrace those collaborations as intentional and as ambitious and aspirational, rather than as like outgrowths of a lack. Because lots of lack has made us actually really good at collaborating.
Yeah. I just want to, I forgot to mention one thing, and I'm sorry, I'm being so ruthlessly shameless about talking about the Go Farm.
You should.
But I'm not sure everyone knows, but Mocha GA, Museum of Contemporary of Georgia, bought a piece of land from us at the Go Farm. So they're there permanently, and so just thinking about collaboration, I know we're going to talk hopefully in a minute about the future, 3 to 5 years, so I'm just going to say that real quick, is, you know, we're going to have emerging, established artists right next to Mocha GA. And so that's just huge, and they want to collaborate and, you know, show works from people that are, give them a chance to show in the museum. So anyway, MoCA, great institution, coming to the Go Club.
Any other examples? We can move on. So last question, and then we can take some questions from y'all. But to end it on like a really hopeful note. So like with permission to dream really big, what do you hope to see in Atlanta? You know, opportunities or programs or things that you're involved in the next like near future. So like 3 to 5 years. With permission to dream big, what do you want to see here?
I would like for Atlanta Art Week to be known as the Art Basel of the South.
Okay.
And I wanted to have that kind of resonance and reputation. Because I don't think I should have to go up north in order to get that experience, or I shouldn't have to go to Miami to get that experience, because we have all of the wealth of resources here. And I hope continued success with Atlanta Art Alliance, just because seeing the collaborative effort in bringing, really warming the community up for Atlanta Art Week. I see what you did there, and I think it was very artful the way that you all organized this, and I think it's a great opportunity for people who are new to the community to introduce themselves. So 3 to 5 years, I hope to see this continued, and Atlanta Art Week is Art Basel.
I will have one thing in response to that. It's like I feel like what you mentioned this earlier, like describing things by saying what they're not.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like by saying like the Art Basel of the South. It's
Right.
like now we're directly comparing ourselves to like Art
Right.
Basel.
Right.
So like, but what you're saying with the premise and the concept of it becoming that big is great. But I do think we should avoid describing ourselves by saying what we're not.
Agree.
Yeah.
I think I made it earlier.
Yeah.
Studio
More
space.
studio space.
Studio
Yeah.
space. Really, truly. Make artists feel like they're actually making it, and make them feel like they're being supported. Make them feel like they're encouraged, like your voice is valid and accurate, we're supported, and that's really all we need, really. That's what I'm hoping for. And I feel pressure, like I'm Asian, I'm an Asian artist, Asian female artist here. It's a huge baggage. Atlanta is the 3rd biggest Korean community here. It's going to be growing. It's going to grow and grow. So I hope to see more accurate depictions of East Asian culture and the readings of our culture, of our people. I'm hoping that I've become an accurate resource to talk about my culture, my heritage. So I hope to see more diversity in the Atlanta art scene. And I think it's happening.
We love that. No, I mean, and honestly, I mean, like everything that all of us do, I mean, and outside of the fact of you wearing your hat as an artist, you know, everything that we do is for art and for artists. So I would love for it 3 to 5 years for her dream to be manifest.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think I would love to see artists who are extraordinarily talented in Atlanta have enough of what they need to stay here, of course. I think outside of that, I would love to see things like, I would love to see action come from this, a panel like this, and I don't mean like action like by just like the five of us up here, or just the people in this room, but I mean like, I think in order to have an ecosystem, you have to have all of these different engines kind of firing in sync with each other. One of them falls off, and you're gonna have a big hole or big part of that is lacking. I think that one of the things that Atlanta community can do together, it's hard for me to do it. If it's hard for like, I would say that it's harder for someone in my position to do a lot of like community organizing because I have a commercial entity and my self-interest would be put out there. People would think that, but I think one of the things that would be really great is if we realized how much power we had in numbers, because if every commercial gallery, every nonprofit, and a good group of artists got together and went to these companies that were moving to Atlanta, went to places like the High Museum and actually like made them pay attention. Like, we are your community, this is what we need. Like, that's difficult, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that that's easy, but it really takes everyone getting in one room together, letting go of the scarcity model and saying, this is what we all need to survive, because when there's another gallery in another part of the city that is surviving and doing really well, people are looking at Atlanta in a different way. So my business grows. More people are looking at art in Atlanta, so the artists that are here in Atlanta, they're more supported. So I think it's really about getting together and really figuring out what we need to do to get more buy-in from the larger entities in Atlanta, like the High Museum, like the government here. Like, I would say those two entities, those two entities could do a lot more to support the Atlanta ecosystem, because there's a trickle-down effect.
Yeah.
Let's be clear. Even the top collectors in Atlanta, if you think about, or you know who they are, if they're not actually supporting artists in Atlanta or showing up at exhibitions, it's those things that can really turn it for us.
Or supporting our institution.
Yeah, supporting our institutions, infrastructural issues, but yeah. Sorry, I don't mean to be negative, by the way.
No, that's okay, you can be negative as long as it's real.
3 to 5 years, it's like a drop in the bucket, it feels like. Pandemic happened, might work my time, but obviously the Go Farm will be open. And I hope that it inspires more for-profit entities, companies, real estate, investing in studios, and arts funding, So if we could do anything that's inspiring more Go Farms, even though it's very complicated, difficult, and we lose a lot of money doing it, it's sustainable. So more sustainable real estate developers in Atlanta clearly development in Atlanta is like the most important thing. So getting more like-minded people investing, and then also just more art jobs. I can't say you,
let's create another weekend that's doing something kind of different than that. And they don't have to be in competition, they don't have to be anti, they can be yes and.
Yeah.
And moving into that yes and place where we're not just supporting the things that we feel like are serving us, but we're supporting the things that are serving the ecosystem, you know? And that doesn't necessarily mean you gotta show up to things that you don't feel like apply to you, but just being open, being kind of vocally supportive of things, even if they're not providing the thing that is your thing. You know, like that kind of thinking allows us to become the diverse and rich and fully served community by not shooting things down from within before they have a chance to like become what they could be. And what I hope in 5 years is that this attention on the commercial market, you know, for-profit part of the Atlanta art community creates more awareness on the city, county, state level of us as a sector, of us as, you know, an economic force, as us as a group, you know, of all those arts communities having a relationship to one another and occupying a space that's worth paying more attention to, funding better, so that those other parts get brought up.
Yeah.
I can't go full magical thinking on it, but that actually feels doable.
Yeah.
Like that feels like something we could have, you know?
Yeah. And I think and same part, my hope is that in 3 to 5 years, we have some, small, like emerging organizations and artists take that next step and become the mid-level that we are, there, that is our gap. So I hope for bakery and for so many other spaces and people to like take that step in the next 3 to 5 years. So we have, let's take at least 3 questions, if anybody has any questions. Right here, who are you and what's your question?
John Cullum, the elderly art writer. And Donovan, I think, really has put his finger on it, and Sarah likewise in terms of an ambitious doable. We think we really are, as he says, if you can create a model of collaborate cross institutional and commercial and nonprofit collaboration to go to the corporations, et cetera, that the scarcity model exists because historically things are scarce. You say, I want to see more East Asian art. Well, there have been 2 commercial galleries showing nothing but contemporary Asian and Asian diaspora art. They both went out of business. And someone recently said, why did you write about a frame shop? And I said, because it's the only place in town where if I want to see right now a historical survey of Latin American art, as they call it, that starts with Wilfredo Lam, I have to go to this frame shop. And that's how they support being able to have a gallery at the same time in their space and to get their existing Wilfredo Lam, et cetera. Anyway, so the point is exact, and the gallery, then I'll stop critiquing and praise once again the model of what has been said today, is that you say the galleries are being timid. No, they're scrambling because basically what keeps them afloat? Interior designers. Almost every single one of them would really love to be more ambitious, but they can only afford to put on shows in which no one buys anything for so many months out of the year. And otherwise, it's basically, here's my remodeling project, what do you have that fits these parameters? And that is utterly destructive. It creates a kind of timidity and a kind of lack that in order, until you can, as you say, what you have said, until you expand the opportunities which are there. They're just, and that's another, you've sort of touched on it. What are the, how do you expand all of these things? And with that, I really want to say I'm really delighted that these have sort of gotten referred to as points to build on. So I'm not sure that I have, at this point, a question except to say that I think the nuances of what you said collectively are really great. This has been a great start.
Awesome. Thank you, Eric. Thanks, Eric. Back there.
Thank you. First, thank you all. I think the work you do is really important, and I really appreciate you sharing this with us. Sarah, I wanted to call out an appreciation for your invitation of generosity at the end of what would it be if we actually contributed in that way. And I thought I might ask back what that looks like in terms of collaboration. Often when I hear people ask for collaboration, they use the word collaboration to say that what they need is money, and they need it directly. And so I'm wondering, if we're talking about collaboration, are there things that you all have noticed or done or seen elsewhere where people have been able to better articulate the terms or the understanding of what the collaboration is in order to make it work?
Yes. But I think that the tit for tat or the resource sharing give and take partnership model it's a thing. It's just a thing, you know? And also, I'll just say I think collaboration is really hard.
Yeah.
True collaboration. You know, it's almost something that has to come about organically, you know, like revolution, it should be from the ground up, you know, otherwise it's something actually different. You know, I think it's hard to say we're going to collaborate and then collaborate. It has to, you know, it's why you can't assign collaboration to students and expect it to go great, you know? And so I think that it's a challenge, right? Real collaboration kind of just needs to be permission to work with the people you like, permission to work with your friends, you know, removing any stigma from that kind of kinship model, you know. But a collaboration that I have seen work, and it's something I'm thinking about a lot, is an initiative called Common Practice New York, which was similar to kind of what Atlanta Arts Alliance is doing, similar to something we're thinking about a lot in art papers, is a model of institutions coming together to say, what are our shared conditions? What is common in our practice? And to really spend a year thinking together and talking together, being behind the scenes together, and then doing a little bit of public, but not necessarily pressure to be public in the beginning, to output. You know, so much that, and what worked about that is that they didn't just get up on a stage and start talking about what was common. They spent a lot of time, you know, working on it together. Time, space, resources to invest in the process. I think that that's where real collaboration happens, you know, when you're not just putting out or asking the question of what you're going to put out before you've spent the time actually finding out what you want to do. Yeah, relationship building, but also just playing together, experimenting. That rush to output is what really shuts that down, you know, because that's where the risk comes in, where you start to be afraid of the failure that might come if you do something that isn't kind of already known. So Common Practice New York, it's like a nerdy thing. It happened 11, 12 years ago. And it was New York based, and they were mid-size and vulnerable arts institutions, and it was folks like the kitchen, which to us was I mean, I even had a moment. I was involved, full disclosure, I was involved with that program. I had a moment where I was y'all realize that you're crazy, right? That any other mid-size institution, any place other than New York, looks at y'all like you are a made mafia. You're, you know, have some perspective, please. But they were facing unique challenges, and by spending a whole year thinking about it, they really
know what South Arts is right now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So,
South
and
Arts.
Monument Lab is another one.
Yeah.
But like locally, South Arts is.
And Via is who funded,
Yeah,
common
so-
practice
yeah,
for.
so even if you're not, I mean, even if you just read some of those application processes for like a phase for collaboration, if you're not in a sector or whatever.
And Monument Lab, like you
Yeah,
mentioned,
Monument
and
Lab,
also
yeah.
Community Foundation for Greater Atlanta, they have a place to exhibit, a place to inform, which I think is what you touched on earlier, when Art Papers collaborates with a space, like it's automatically a collaboration, right? So one person doesn't have to visit the space, the other does. And I think that is a great example of collaboration where the outcome is obvious. And I also heard somebody say the other day, I don't remember who it was, but they said, we're a partner, but we're really a glorified funder. And like that was, we need, you know,
If what you're in the business
Yeah.
of doing is funding things,
Yeah.
then that's not a bad collaboration. You
Yeah.
know, like let's not stigmatize giving people money.
Yeah. Yeah, but I thought that was an interesting way of glorified funder. I'm like, yeah, that makes you a partner, because you
Yeah.
made it happen. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
also, we have Craig Drennan in our community. He was and I have to tell you, he's a teacher, he's an educator. He's an artist, well-established artist,
A mentor.
a mentor, and then also as an artist, he runs a project space without any funding. He basically funds his own exhibition space at East Atlanta.
Dozens of dollars.
There you go. So I think I wanna hear Mr. Drennan's
Oh, you don't-
thought about
on
your
board.
perception. You've been here long enough. You've seen so many artists.
Oh.
There's so many people admiring your opinions.
I feel sabotaged right now.
Hey, come on, I delivered my rant, why you talk?
Well, I started the end at the part of this, I mean, I had been looking for a studio space for about 6 months as well, because studio space is hard. My sidebar item is I ask everybody to vote in your local elections and vote for local politicians who support rent control. Because if you have rent control, then the gallery districts don't have to disperse. Artists don't have to leave their studios. Like, if there is a legitimate, rational rent control in place, then cities can do well. Which is why Portland, Oregon seems to have a more thriving downtown gallery district than a lot of other cities, because they have rent control in that district, and so on. So I was desperately looking for a space. I found one. It's always tentative. I always feel like I'm 3 months away from being kicked out. And I wanted to make a place where artists could show work, and for people to have maybe their first solo show, because it's easy to get into group shows, maybe like a lot of group shows happen, but to have like just the megaphone of one solo show, even if it's a place that looks like it's the front end of a Jiffy Lube, which is what my place looks like and smells like. So even that, everybody has said yes. Everybody I've invited has said yes. Again, there's no funding. There's nothing other than I'll buy some drinks at the opening, and the artist has to do everything else. But it's been great. We've gotten reviews, we've won a grant or two, but it's all about the artist. So all I had to do was create a flimsy space for people to do the work that they do. I'm thinking of a line from a movie, Babette's Feast, where he says, all any artist wants is a chance to do their very best. And I think that's what the artists deserve here. It's called the Improv Space, ladies and gentlemen. No commission, no insurance, no regrets. It's called The End. That's how raw the space was. There were no numbers anywhere. It's like, where am I going? They're like, you're at the end.
No,
So it's stuck.
no, well, yes, and then I had to explain to people when I wrote my reviews. Well, it's called The End, even though it feels like you're at the end of the earth when you finally find it. But it's here's Craig's studio, and here's the end of Craig's studio on where there's a window. That's the gallery, so it's the end.
Yeah.
And I think that's another great example of what do artists need? They need space. I'm going to make that space, just like doing it. So I think that's find all of that information on the website and on the handout on the front table. So thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
And real quick, we have food outside, and usually Donovan serves bubbles at his panels. I've got PBR, Natty Light, and tequila. And also, if you go to Atlanta Arts Alliance website, you can see that Bahamu Pingu is opening his studio right over in Oakland City, around the corner. He'll be open for another couple of hours. So. And there's a lot of other people open today.